Most people are working far too hard, growing the same supermarket crops in a small-scale growing economy that now rewards rare plants, specialty herbs, and natural ingredients for wellness and skincare. Let's be honest. A lot of gardeners get stuck in the same exhausting loop, planting basic tomatoes, cucumbers, and common vegetables, then putting in weeks of labor for only a few dollars in return. I have seen it again and again. The work is real, but the profit is painfully small. But what if the real opportunity is not in growing more of what everyone else is already growing? What if, while many farmers are fighting over commodity crops with razor-thin margins, a smaller group of smart growers is quietly building 5- and 6-figure incomes from plants most people barely notice? They are doing it with crops you may have walked past 100 times without giving them a second look. Some of these plants can sell for $30, $50, even $100 per pound. And the surprising part is this. They are not mysterious laboratory plants or impossible exotic crops. Many of them are tough, hardy, practical, and inexpensive to start. Have you ever looked at your backyard and wondered whether it is only an expensive hobby? Have you ever thought that your soil, your shade, your dry corner, or even a small patch of water might be able to produce something far more valuable? Welcome back to Farmyard Care. Today, we are not just talking about gardening. We are talking about turning ordinary growing space into high-margin, self-sustaining assets. I am going to walk you through 15 profitable plants that almost nobody is growing, even though real buyers at farmers markets, restaurants, tea shops, herbal businesses, and natural product companies are already looking for reliable suppliers. Stay with me until the end, because plant number 1 is America's forgotten caffeine plant hiding in plain sight, and plant number 4 can turn a small patch of water into a powerful protein-producing system. So grab your notebook, tell me where you are watching from in the comments, and make sure you are subscribed, because one of these plants may completely change the way you look at your garden, your land, and your financial future. Let's dig in. 1. Moringa, the biological wealth generator. Let's begin with a plant that, if you choose to grow nothing else from this list, could still change the way you think about profit in the garden. Number 1 is Moringa, often called the miracle tree, and for good reason. If your climate can support it and you are not growing Moringa, you may be leaving serious value sitting right in your backyard. Moringa leaves are incredibly dense in nutrition. Gram for gram, they contain more vitamin C than oranges, more calcium than milk, and more protein than eggs. That is why the wellness market has become so interested in this plant. Premium organic Moringa powder can retail anywhere from $15 to $50 per pound. But the real opportunity is not just in the leaves. With many crops, you harvest one part and throw the rest away. With Moringa, almost every part can become a product. Fresh leaves can be sold to health-focused buyers. Seeds can be used for high-end cosmetic oils. Pods can be sold as a specialty food. Dried leaves can be turned into a superfood powder. The lesson here is speed. Moringa teaches us the value of fast-moving agriculture. This tree can grow extremely quickly, sometimes reaching up to 15 feet in its first year under the right conditions. It asks for very little, yet it can give back again and again. So ask yourself, are you planting crops that take years to reward you? Or are you building high-velocity assets that start producing value quickly? 2. Saffron crocus, the red gold. Now stop for a moment and think about this. Saffron can sell for $2,500 to $9,000 per pound. It is known as the most expensive spice on earth, and it has held that reputation for centuries. Saffron comes from the Crocus sativus flower. Each flower produces only 3 tiny red threads, and those threads must be harvested by hand. It takes roughly 75,000 flowers to produce just 1 pound of dried saffron. That sounds overwhelming until you understand that this number of flowers can fit on about a quarter acre of land. The starting cost for saffron corms can be high, but the plants multiply underground over time. That means your planting stock can increase year after year. And because much of the saffron market is dominated by imports from places like Iran and Spain, locally grown, traceable saffron can be especially attractive to chefs, specialty grocers, and serious home cooks who want quality they can trust. The lesson here is patience and precision. Saffron is not a crop for careless growing. It requires careful handwork during a short harvest window of about 4 weeks in autumn. But sometimes the highest value comes from crops where you trade large volume for true luxury. Does your farm or garden have space for a crop where careful work matters more than massive acreage? 3. Duckweed, the aquatic protein factory. Number 3 may look too small to matter, but do not underestimate it. Duckweed is that tiny green plant you often see covering the surface of ponds. Most people ignore it. Some even think of it as a nuisance. But smart growers understand that while others are fighting poor soil and irrigation problems, duckweed allows you to farm the surface of the water. This is not just pond scum. Duckweed can be a serious protein-producing crop. It can contain up to 45% protein by dry weight, which puts it in a very strong position compared with many traditional plant protein sources. High-grade dried duckweed can sell for $30 to $60 per pound as demand grows for sustainable, plant-based protein. The biggest strength of duckweed is speed. Under the right conditions, it can double its biomass in as little as 48 hours. You do not need a tractor. You do not need rows of land. You can begin with simple tanks, tubs, or a managed backyard water system. The lesson here is that profit does not always come from the prettiest crop. Sometimes it comes from speed, simplicity, and serving a market that most gardeners never even think about. Are you using every part of your property, including the water? 4. Ashwagandha, the drought-tolerant gold mine. Most people would walk past ashwagandha and think it is just another ordinary shrub. But in the wellness world, this root has become extremely valuable. Ashwagandha is known as an adaptogen, often used in products connected with stress support and overall wellness. As more people look for natural ways to handle burnout and daily pressure, demand for this root has helped turn it into a major industry. Here is what makes ashwagandha so interesting for growers. It does not want to be pampered. It actually prefers dry, sandy, poor soil that would make many common vegetables struggle. A tomato plant might collapse in those conditions, but ashwagandha can thrive there. Overwatering can damage the crop, so neglect, in the right measure, can actually work in your favor. Dried ashwagandha roots can sell for $15 to $60 per pound depending on quality, and much of the supply is still imported. That creates an opening for growers who can produce clean, well-handled roots locally. The lesson here is simple. Stop fighting your land. If you have a sunny, dry, difficult patch of soil, you may already have the right foundation for a valuable crop. And if you go beyond selling raw roots by turning them into powder or tinctures, you move from being just a gardener to becoming a small specialty supplement supplier. How can you reduce the middleman and increase the value of what you grow? 5. Real wasabi, the elusive culinary treasure. Everything many people think they know about sushi may be wrong. In North America, most of what is served as wasabi is not real wasabi at all. It is usually green-colored horseradish and mustard. Real wasabi, known as Eutrema japonicum, can command prices of $100 or more per pound. The true rhizome has a complex flavor, sharp, sweet, floral, and delicate. But once it is grated, that flavor begins to fade quickly, often within about 15 minutes. That means freshness is everything. The challenge is that real wasabi is difficult to grow. It can take around 18 months to mature, and it needs cool temperatures, usually between 8 degrees Celsius and 18 degrees Celsius. It also requires a damp, heavily shaded microclimate. In places like the Pacific Northwest, some growers have managed to imitate Japanese streambed conditions by growing wasabi in gravel beds inside specialized greenhouse systems. The lesson here is that high barriers create high value. Wasabi is sensitive, demanding, and vulnerable to fungal disease, so very few people are willing to grow it. But if you can master that controlled environment, you may become one of the few reliable suppliers for high-end chefs in your area. Are you willing to learn the difficult crops that most growers avoid? 6. Gotu kola, the brain-boosting ground cover. Number 6 is a plant that mainstream agriculture often overlooks, yet it has become an important ingredient in the growing markets for brain health, herbal wellness, and clean beauty. That plant is Gotu kola. Gotu kola is valued for its connection to cognitive support, memory, and skin repair. It is a low-growing perennial that spreads quickly through runners, forming a thick carpet of useful green biomass. Dried Gotu kola can sell for $20 to $60 per pound, depending on quality and market. What makes it especially useful for small growers is where it likes to grow. While many high-value crops demand full sun, perfect drainage, and constant attention, Gotu kola does well in damp, shaded areas where other profitable plants may struggle, rot, or simply refuse to grow. The lesson here is simple. On a smart farm, there is no such thing as wasted space. That shaded corner, that damp edge, that forgotten strip of land may be able to serve a valuable niche market. Boutique skincare makers, herbalists, and wellness buyers are often looking for clean, reliable plant material. So ask yourself, what is growing in the shadows of your garden? 7. Sichuan pepper, the numbing spice shrub. Now imagine biting into something that makes your tongue gently numb, then fills your mouth with citrusy, floral, almost electric warmth. That is the unforgettable experience of Sichuan pepper. Despite the name, this is not a true pepper. It comes from a woody shrub or small tree in the Xanthoxylum family, and the valuable part is the dried red husk. For chefs who cook Sichuan dishes, ramen, modern Asian fusion, or bold specialty foods, this spice is not optional. It gives food a sensation that ordinary pepper simply cannot replace. High-end Asian restaurants, ramen shops, and adventurous chefs are often looking for fresh, locally grown supply, and prices can range from $15 to $80 per pound. In many Western countries, local production is still very limited, which creates a real opening for early growers. The lesson here is that the long game can pay very well. A Sichuan pepper tree takes a few years to establish, but once it settles in, it can produce heavily for 15 to 20 years. First mover advantage matters. Are you planting short-term crops only, or are you building perennial assets that can keep paying you, and maybe even your children, for decades? 8. Tulsi, the sacred herb gone mainstream. In the gardening world, many people chase the most beautiful flowers. But if you are thinking like a grower who wants both resilience and profit, you need to pay attention to Tulsi, also known as holy basil. This sacred Ayurvedic herb has moved far beyond traditional use and entered the mainstream wellness market in a big way. It is used in stress relief teas, tinctures, herbal blends, and even luxury skincare products. Tulsi is also one of those plants that rewards practical growers. It loves heat, has strong natural aroma, and is often less bothered by pests than many tender herbs. The more you harvest the leaves properly, the bushier and more productive the plant becomes. Dried Tulsi can sell for $8 to $45 per pound. The lesson here is that resilience and versatility are powerful advantages. Because Tulsi is so aromatic, it can also interest buyers in the essential oil and infused product markets. You can sell it fresh, dried, blended, or infused. One plant can create several income streams, so look at your own crops and ask, how adaptable are they? 9. Culantro, the heat-loving powerhouse. This is the plant many people confuse with cilantro, but culantro can be far more valuable in the right market. Cilantro is famous for bolting as soon as summer heat arrives. One hot spell, and it often rushes to seed before you get a good harvest. Culantro is different. It loves heat, handles humidity, and keeps producing through the warm season when regular cilantro begins to fail. It is an essential ingredient in authentic Puerto Rican sofrito, Vietnamese pho, Thai curries, and many other traditional dishes. Because it is still hard to find in many regular grocery stores, specialty grocers and restaurant chefs are often eager for a dependable local supplier. Cilantro can fetch $10 to $30 per pound, often much more than standard cilantro. The lesson here is that you do not need everyone to want your crop. You only need a passionate niche market with real demand and very little competition. Cilantro prefers partial shade and humidity, which makes it useful in growing spaces that may be too intense or too protected for other herbs. Find out what local communities and chefs are missing from their traditional recipes, then become the grower who supplies it. 10. Shiso, the sushi chef's secret. To a casual gardener, shiso may look like just another leafy herb. But to Japanese chefs and specialty restaurants, it is a serious ingredient with real value. Shiso leaves are delicate, aromatic, and highly perishable. Once they are bruised, wilted, or old, their value drops quickly. That is exactly where a small local grower has an advantage that large distributors cannot easily match. A big distributor may ship herbs across long distances, but you can harvest in the morning and deliver fresh leaves to a chef by the afternoon. That level of freshness is hard to compete with. Fresh shiso can command $10 to $50 per pound when quality and timing are right. The lesson here is that freshness itself can be a business advantage. Large companies can compete on volume, but they often struggle to compete with speed, care, and local relationships. If you live within driving distance of an Asian restaurant or specialty chef, one strong relationship with a head chef could support steady weekly sales throughout your growing season. 11. Calendula, the skincare industry's darling. Calendula, also known as pot marigold, is far more than a cheerful garden flower. To an experienced grower, those bright petals are not just decoration. They are valuable plant material used in natural skincare, herbal preparations, and clean beauty products because they are prized for soothing, tissue-supporting, and anti-inflammatory qualities. The natural skincare market is growing fast, and many small manufacturers are looking for dependable growers who can provide clean, well-dried calendula petals. Dried organic calendula petals can retail for $15 to $50 per pound. But the real profit comes when you understand value addition. If you take those dried petals and infuse them into carrier oils or turn them into salves and skincare products, the value of the crop can increase dramatically. And calendula has one more advantage growers love. The more you pick the flowers, the more the plant keeps producing. The lesson here is that you are not just growing flowers. You are growing ingredients. Processing and value addition can completely change the economics of a small farm. So ask yourself, how can you take a simple raw crop and turn it into a premium finished product? 12. American Ginseng, the hidden forest treasure. Now let's talk about a crop so valuable that some growers have used security cameras and even microchips to protect the roots from theft. That crop is American Ginseng. American ginseng can be grown under the shade of a natural forest canopy using a method called wild simulated farming. It is not a quick crop. These roots usually take 6 to 10 years to mature. But for growers who are patient, the reward can be remarkable. Because Asian markets place a high value on roots that look wild and naturally grown, wild simulated American ginseng can sell for $300 to $700 per dried pound. And while the roots are slowly maturing underground, the plants can produce seeds each year. Those seeds can sell for up to $200 per pound, giving you a possible income stream while you wait for the main harvest. The lesson here is that agriculture is not only about quick cash. Sometimes it is about building long-term, even generational wealth. If you have untouched woodland on your property, you may be sitting on a resource most people never recognize. Are you willing to play the long game? 13. Lemon balm, the passive income perennial. Many gardeners treat lemon balm like an invasive weed that is hard to control. But a smart grower looks at that same plant differently. What others see as aggressive, I see as productive. And when there is a market for it, that kind of growth can become an asset. Lemon balm sits at the center of several strong markets: herbal teas, aromatherapy, and natural sleep support products. Because it belongs to the mint family, it spreads quickly, needs very little maintenance, and comes back year after year with impressive energy. Dried lemon balm leaves can fetch $8 to $22 per pound. But if you take it further and distill it into Melissa essential oil, the value can reach hundreds of dollars per ounce. The lesson here is simple. What some people call invasive, a grower can call prolific. The key is to choose crops that already want to grow vigorously in your climate, then guide that natural energy into a product people are willing to buy. 14. Purslane, the nutrient-dense survivor. I included this plant because it challenges the way many gardeners think. Purslane is often treated like a weed. Most people pull it out, toss it into the compost, and never stop to ask whether they just threw away something valuable. But in much of Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, purslane is respected as a culinary green. Fresh purslane can sell for $5 to $15 per pound at farmers markets and to restaurants. Why? Because it is known as one of the richest leafy plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids, and it is also loaded with vitamins and minerals. From a growing perspective, purslane is almost unbelievably tough. It thrives in poor soil, intense heat, dry conditions, and places where many delicate greens would collapse. The lesson here is that sometimes the problem is not the plant. The problem is perception. What you have been pulling up and throwing away, someone else may be selling at a premium. So how many other opportunities are you stepping on in your own garden? 15. Yaupon holly, America's forgotten caffeine. We saved one of the most fascinating sleeper crops for last. Yaupon holly has something many profitable crops do not have: a powerful story. Yaupon is the only caffeinated plant native to North America. Long before imported coffee and tea became everyday habits, indigenous peoples brewed Yaupon as a traditional energizing drink. Yet today, many Americans spend time and money trying to remove this so-called pesky hedge from their yards. Now the market for this forgotten native tea is growing. Artisan roasted Yaupon can sell for $15 to $30 per ounce in specialty shops. It offers a smooth energy lift because it contains caffeine along with theobromine, the same pleasant compound found in chocolate. And from a farm perspective, Yaupon is incredibly practical. It is native, drought-tolerant, perennial, and can function like a living tea hedge. You plant it once, manage it well, and harvest from it for years. The lesson here is that in a market crowded with imported superfoods, a native, sustainable crop with a real history can be one of the strongest opportunities for small growers. You are not just selling tea, you are selling a piece of reclaimed history. Take a moment and look at what we have covered. From passive perennials to high-demand ingredients for skincare, the move from hobby gardener to profitable grower does not require massive capital. And it certainly does not require hundreds of acres. What it requires is a strategic mindset. The old commodity model of growing huge volumes of common crops for thin margins is difficult for small growers to win. The people building real financial freedom from the land are often doing it through specialization. They serve premium niches like clean beauty, herbal wellness, nootropics, artisan teas, and high-end culinary markets where buyers are actively searching for quality and are willing to pay for it. So I have to ask you, are you going to keep working hard for pennies? Or are you ready to look at your soil, your shade, your water, and your woodland through a different lens? Do not try to grow all 15 of these plants at once. Choose one or two that fit your climate, your land, and your local market. Start small, grow them clean, learn your buyers, then scale with confidence. The path to financial freedom may be growing right beneath your feet. Which of these 15 plants surprised you the most? Are you team adaptogens, team exotic spices, or team native tea? Drop a comment below right now. I read every single one, and I want to know what you are building this year. If this opened your eyes to a new way of growing, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs to stop growing cheap crops with expensive effort. Make sure you are subscribed to Farmyard Care and turn on the notification bell, because we are building a community of growers who know how to find the opportunities everyone else is missing. Until next time, keep your hands in the dirt, stay curious, and go plant something profitable.